And welcome. Thank you for joining us here tonight. Tonight we're starting our series on relationships, forming better relationships. Tonight our focus is on 10 things that impose on relationships. 10 things that impose on relationships. So if you're just now joining us, go ahead and like and share this video. Go ahead and call up your friends and loved ones and let them know that we're on. And we're going to be getting started here in just a second. You notice my shirt here, Recreating a Better Me. That's what it's all about. We're just here enjoying one another, establishing a relationship with one another, trying to impart knowledge and wisdom so that we are all better. And that's what it's all about. So I appreciate you sacrificing your time to be up with us, because we know that it is truly a sacrifice to be up past 10 o'clock, especially when we've been on the go, hustle and bustle all week. I am grateful also tonight to have my beautiful co-host, Miss Shanthony, aka Snow White, with me again tonight. And we'll get ready to get started. 10 things that impose on relationships. Number 1, finances. Finances. And if you remember when we first start doing these Facebook Lives, that's one of the things that we started with. We started teaching about finances. Finances play a big part in our relationships, especially relationships with our families. And if we're in marriages, they play a big part of relationships in our marriages. Finances touch every part of our life. I can't think of one part of my life that finances doesn't really play a part in one way or another. Shanthony, give us an example of how finances impose on relationships.
It can be a burden, especially like if you're in a marriage. If one person is more about saving money and budgeting, and the other one's like, "Well, I'm gonna just spend it all." You can butt heads.
Yeah, that can really put a strain. And not only in marriages, what about these jobs we're working on where the wages aren't quite enough to make our ends meet?
I mean, everyone's not lucky to have a good paying job, and sometimes you just have to, I don't want to say deal with it, but it's just something that you'll have to cope with.
So we have to get creative sometime in these jobs that we work. Sometimes we find families that are having to work 2 and 3 and sometimes even 4 jobs, guys, to make those ends meet up. We establish relationships with our employer. Those are relationships, and finances play a major role sometimes in whether we stay or go, or how much effort we put into it. I mean, we just got to be honest about that. Finances is a major part that imposes on relationships. I'm glad you joined us here tonight. You're just joining us. Go ahead and like and share this video. Also, feel free to leave us a comment in the comment section. Number 2, immaturity. Immaturity. Immaturity is a huge factor across any relationship that can impose on relationships, because I shared in my book, Recreating a Better Me, how my lack of maturity affected my ability for stabilization when it came to a job. Not only that, but when it came to relationships, intimate relationships, because my maturity level was so low, and because I lacked that stability and that maturity that it takes to stick it out, I found myself building habits of just looking for a reason to walk away or to move on. And a lot of times we find that this is one of the things that imposes most on relationships next to finance. Now, these aren't listed in any particular way, but I can almost bet you that if there's a finance issue, immaturity is closely behind the finance. So that's why I listed it here in the first two. Now, if you haven't looked at our lives or listened to our lives about our thoughts and how our mindsets and how we think, if immaturity is one of the things that you find that continues to impose upon your relationships, then those are where you need to back up and go back and listen to those videos and begin to create changes in your own mindset so that your maturity level can develop and grow. And as you develop and grow, you'll find that your relationships are going to be so much better. You're even going to have healthier relationships with your money, your finances. Like I say, relationships are in everything we do. This is just not about a marriage. It's just not about our careers or parenting. It transcends across every dynamic of our life. We are a complex being. We're not just one-dimensional. So there's a lot of things involved in being who we are and being better. So when we're better, our relationships are going to be better as well. Number 3, lack of respect. Lack of respect on any part imposes on relationships, from employee to employer, from husband to wife, from sister to sister, from nephew to uncle. Whatever that relationship is, if you have a lack of respect for the other party, it's going to impose upon your relationship. Snow, elaborate a little bit about respect or lack thereof in relationships.
Always respect each other's opinions, because you are, whether it's friendship, siblingship, marriages, always respect each other's opinions and consider them. So I would say compromising is what comes with it.
Okay. Being willing to compromise, yeah.
Because you're not always right, they're not always right, but you both have a right to an opinion on how you think. Mm-hmm. And you shouldn't belittle each other just because you think that whatever they think is not right.
Mm-hmm. Everybody's opinion deserves to be respected. I mentioned on last night, the only will that's stronger than God's will for your life is your own will. We can't make anybody do anything. We cross the line over to control and abuse when we neglect to show that respect one for another. I don't have to always agree with you to give you respect. I don't have to necessarily like you to give you respect. Respect is just something that we make up in our mind that we are different and unique in our own way, and that's okay. And it doesn't make it necessarily right or wrong on anybody's part. It's just that they feel the way they feel, I feel the way I feel, and it's okay. It's okay for us to still have our opinions and still maintain a healthy interactions within the relationship. So lack of respect, it definitely imposes on any type of relationship. And that goes back to the desire to control someone else. I told you when you're angry and you're showing that lack of respect for someone, you're doing that because you desire to control that other person within that relationship. So if you're having these struggles with showing respect in your relationship, please go back and listen to the tape that we done on the mindset and understanding how your thoughts work. That is going to be beneficial for you. We thank you for joining us tonight. We thank you for those that are just logging on. Go ahead and like and share this video. We are glad that you are here with us tonight. Tonight we are talking about 10 things that impose upon relationships. And we're not just talking about the relationship between a husband and a wife or a parent and a child. We're talking about relationships across the board. We, us, and you guys are in a relationship. We are establishing a relationship between one another. We're exchanging communication between one another. So all these things, if we fail to put these things into perspective, they can impose upon our relationship. We hope, though, since you sacrifice so much to be here with us and join us, that you feel respected. Nonetheless, let's move forward into number 4, boundaries. When we fail to establish, reestablish, and reassess healthy working boundaries, it imposes on our relationships, especially between a parent and a child. We set boundaries as parents for our children, but sometimes we can neglect to see that our children are growing and developing. And as they grow and develop, those boundaries need to go and be readjusted and reevaluated so that they fit the progress and the development that we desire for our children. That's also in our marriages. In our marriages, as time goes on, the boundaries that were healthy in the first 3 or 4 years of marriage may not necessarily be healthy boundaries for the next 10. So those are things that we need to take a look at, the boundaries that have been established. Because a lot of times with parenting, parenting didn't come with a handbook to tell us how to do everything. So we're learning, and as we learn, the boundaries and stuff have to be reestablished. Snow, do you have something to include there on boundaries and how they impose on relationships?
Well, with most relationships, like, you know each other's buttons. And so I would say those are technically boundaries.
Okay, so just being aware of that and respecting that as well, huh? All right, good, awesome. Number 5, tradition. Tradition. I bet some of you didn't know that, did you? Tradition imposes upon your relationships. And oftentimes we find that tradition affects more of our relationship than anything at all. We're not used to things being that way. Mama said it had to be this way because this is the way Grandma and them done it. And we try to have that relationship that Grandma and them had or Mama and them had. And it just does not work that way. What was good for somebody else may not necessarily be good for you. So tradition affects our thinking a lot of times, and how we think a marriage ought to be, and how we think the kids ought to be. And it just imposes friction, confusion upon our relationships. Tradition can affect how we interact on our jobs. The job is moving forward, but we're accustomed to things being the way that we're used to them being. I tell you what, now with the pandemic that's going on in our world, the old traditional public school education, that has imposed some difficulties for how we're moving forward in education. Traditionally, with the paper and pencil, and now moving to technology, and now advancing that more into all technology or a hybrid type of education for our public school children and our educators, because it's hard for us educators too, making that transition. And if we're not comfortable with technology, which so many of us aren't, because it wasn't our era, it's going to impose on the relationships between the teachers and the students as well. So now being used to being hands-on and face-to-face, and now we're virtual, it's going to impose on that relationship. And now we have to go and reestablish that teacher-student relationship as well. Did you have something to add, Snow? All right. Thank you for joining us tonight. For those that are just logging on, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section. We're talking tonight about 10 things that impose upon relationships. We're up to number 6, family and friends. Now we know that our environment affects everything around us, our thought process, all that. But family and friends don't necessarily fit into your more intimate relationships. They can wreak havoc on your relationships if they're not put into healthy perspectives. Family and friends, yes, they love us and they mean well, but we shouldn't always give an account or be prey to what they would have done, or how they would handle things, or what they wouldn't put up with. Or I wouldn't take that from that job. I wouldn't work that job. I wouldn't drive that far for that job. I wouldn't work those hours. They mean well, but just because they mean well doesn't necessarily mean that it fits in your relationship for whatever it is. Because we don't know the state of their mentality. We don't know if they did the steps to understand how their thoughts are processed. We don't know if they have a jealous spirit and just don't want to see you do well. We want to believe they have our best interests at heart, but even sometimes with them having our best interests at heart, they don't necessarily know, because what's good for Snow and what she can deal with may not necessarily be good for me. So we have to know that even though family and friends love us and may have our best interests at heart, they can impact and impose upon our relationships without necessarily meaning to. Number 7, ignorance. Ignorance imposes upon our relationships. No doubt about it. There's nothing more undesirable than being connected to an ignorant spouse, an ignorant child, an ignorant boss, an ignorant friend, whatever. It is just so distasteful. It is so distasteful. Ignorance. People think they know that they don't know. They just don't want to learn, unlearn. It affects us all. If I don't know, and I'm trying to tell my boss how to be the boss, How long you think that relationship's gonna last?
Not very long.
Probably not
And
very
you probably
long.
won't stay at the job either.
Probably not very long at all. And how many of us work these dead-end jobs? We're miserable on the job, and we feel like we know the job better than our boss. And we just complain and complain and complain and complain. Just ignorant. Just don't know how ignorant we are. But now with the pandemic and Corona coming through, Corona is putting some things in perspective. So that job that you complained about so much with your ignorant self, now you don't have that job. That puts a whole lot of things in perspective, didn't it? So maybe now you're in a position to where you can learn something. And instead of being ignorant, learn to be grateful. Learn new skills.
Learn how to boost your immune system instead of buying these so-called essentials for no reason.
Yeah. So,
Because I shouldn't go to the store and it'd be no toilet paper, not very many food. All the milk is gone. First of all, milk expires very quickly. So people who stocking up on milk, that's ignorance. Boost your immune system. Eat more vegetables. Take vitamins. Stop buying unnecessary things.
I think it's just that fear. Fear at that point takes over the ignorance. Fear at that point takes over. Because when we're ignorant and unlearned, it affects relationships. We're mad at people going to the store trying to get stuff that have came in and just collecting it all. It is what it is. Those are relationships, guys. We are a community.
All I know is I better be able to buy some darn toilet paper when I go back to the store. Don't make no sense.
We are a community. Thank you guys for joining us. I see some of you just logging on and joining us. We're talking tonight about 10 things that impose upon relationships. We are up to number 8. Number 8, communication.
It's key.
Go ahead and tell us about that.
Communication is a big factor in relationships. I always say, don't be afraid to express how you feel.
So don't be afraid to express how you feel. Yeah, that's one thing.
And sometimes you just have to agree to disagree.
Agree to disagree. That's right. But what about withholding information? How does that break down your relationships?
Sometimes it's not worth acknowledging because it goes back to immaturity and respecting the other person that you have a relationship. So that's what I would say about that.
Okay. Also with communication, guys, there's a component called wisdom that goes along with communication. And that's where a lot of the communication is broken down. Oftentimes we're communicating things that may or may not be necessary. So if you don't have that wisdom component added into your lines of communication, oftentimes that's where it's broken down. There are some things that are necessary to say, and there are some things that you just think it necessary to say. And oftentimes that is not, that is where the imposition upon your relationship comes in. Just because you think a thing, we realize now, doesn't necessarily make it right or wrong. So you have to use wisdom in your communication. All right. Thank you for joining us. If you're just joining us, like I just seen some of you did, go ahead and like and share this video. Tonight, we're talking about 10 things that impose upon relationships in our Better Relationships series. So, number 9, your insecurities. Your personal insecurities directly affect your relationships. They impose upon your relationships. Whatever we have in this being here precedes us in everything we do. So every little insecurity we feel inside follows us into every relationship that we establish. So if our insecurities do that, what do you think the opposite of insecurity would do? The opposite of insecurity is confidence. So if I'm confident, then my relationships are going to reflect more confidence. But being that I'm insecure in one area or another, that relationship is going to reflect that. Did you have something to add to that, Snow? All right. 10 things that impose upon relationship. We're up to number 10. Number 10 is religion. Number 10 is religion. And as saved and sanctified and Holy Ghost filled as so many of us are,
We like to think.
religion is not the same as being a child of God. Religion is a practice that helps us to learn about a God, and we know that there are so many of them, and people have their own opinion when it comes to it. But if you have a relationship with Christ Himself, that has nothing else to do with any religious practice that we practice. And I hope that I have made that clear and that you understand that, so that you can see how a religion, something that you practice, affects or imposes your relationships. And I was guilty here in this until I understand that I have a relationship with Christ. I believe that His Spirit abides within my being. Now, that doesn't go to say that because I feel like I have a relationship, a mature relationship with Christ, and that He governs my life, doesn't mean that I go and divorce my spouse because he doesn't have that same relationship. It doesn't mean that I condemn my children because they don't have that same relationship. And oftentimes, religion imposes on our relationship because it causes us to feel some type of guilt or to feel some kind of way because our children aren't practicing the religion like we practice, or our spouses don't attend the same religious facility that we attend. You see how that would impose upon your relationship? Christ is a loving being. He resides within us. It has nothing to do with a religious facility or a practice of a particular religion that we should hold others accountable for attending or not attending or practicing or not practicing. It all goes back to respecting those boundaries, respecting for people for who they are and what they believe, and allowing your light or your example to be enough to draw them in. Do you have anything to add?
That religion does play a big part in our morals and values when it comes to relationships.
You have to establish those healthy boundaries when you're doing that. You can't expect your friends to fall privy to your religion or to accept your religion. If we love Christ, we love Christ.
And also respect the fact that not everyone has the same religious beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it can be hard sometimes because you may not agree. But I mean, still, it all ties down to respecting the other person. Mm-hmm. Like, I met a young lady several years ago who didn't believe in anything. That didn't reflect anything on our relationship. We're still really good friends. We still check up on each other.
But if you try to impose your belief upon someone else, then that
can cause conflict. Mm-hmm. When you're trying to just throw it at somebody like, oh, you should do this because this is what my religion says. Mm-hmm. Things like that.
And you said the key point that we're getting at your religion. So there's a difference between the relationship that you have with the God of your life and religion. So you want to kind of keep those separate and understand what you're imposing upon another person within your relationship. We beat our kids over the head because of a religion, a religious practice, stuff we're taught in religion. But what does God say about it all? What does he have to say? Because man can form an opinion on anything. But you have a spirit and a conscience within that should lead and guide you into areas of wisdom so that you're able to maintain healthier relationships. We talked tonight on 10 things that impose on our relationships. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like and share this video. We appreciate so much of your time sacrificed to be here with us. We truly enjoy being here with you guys. It's all about just learning together. Snow, do you have anything else that you'd like to add on tonight regarding things that impose upon our relationship? All right. We thank you guys for joining us tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time.